Book 6, Chapter 4 of The Dead Secret. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by David Wales. The Dead Secret by Wilkie Collins. Book 6, Chapter 4. The Close of Day. The night, with its wakeful anxieties, wore away at last, and the morning light dawned hopefully, for it brought with it the promise of an end to Rosamund's suspense. The first event of the day was the arrival of Mr. Nixon, who had received a note on the previous evening, written by Leonard's desire, to invite him to breakfast. Before the lawyer withdrew, he had settled with Mr. and Mrs. Frankland all the preliminary arrangements that were necessary to effect the restoration of the purchase money of Porthgenna Tower, and had despatched a messenger with a letter to Bayswater, announcing his intention of calling upon Andrew Treverton that afternoon on private business of importance relating to the personal estate of his late brother. Toward noon Uncle Joseph arrived at the hotel to take Rosamund with him to the house where her mother lay ill. He came in, talking, in the highest spirits, of the wonderful change for the better that had been wrought in his niece by the affectionate message which he had taken to her on the previous evening. He declared that it had made her look happier, stronger, younger, all in a moment, that it had given her the longest, quietest, sweetest night's sleep she had enjoyed for years and years past; and last, best triumph of all, that its good influence had been acknowledged not an hour since by the doctor himself. Rosamund listened thankfully, but it was with a wandering attention, with a mind ill at ease. When she had taken leave of her husband, and when she and Uncle Joseph were out in the street together, there was something in the prospect of the approaching interview between her mother and herself which, in spite of her efforts to resist the sensation, almost daunted her. If they could have come together, and have recognised each other without time to think what should be first said or done on either side, the meeting would have been nothing more than the natural result of the discovery of the secret. But, as it was, the waiting, the doubting, the mournful story of the past, which had filled up the emptiness of the last day of suspense, all had their depressing effect on Rosamund's impulsive disposition. Without a thought in her heart which was not tender, compassionate, and true toward her mother, she now felt, nevertheless, a vague sense of embarrassment, which increased to positive uneasiness the nearer she and the old man drew to their short journey's end. As they stopped at last at the house door, she was shocked to find herself thinking beforehand of what first words it would be best to say, of what first things it would be best to do, as if she had been about to visit a total stranger, whose favourable opinion she wished to secure, and whose readiness to receive her cordially was a matter of doubt. The first person whom they saw after the door was opened was the doctor. He advanced toward them from a little empty room at the end of the hall, and asked permission to speak with Mrs. Frankland for a few minutes. Leaving Rosamund to her interview with the doctor, Uncle Joseph gaily ascended the stairs to tell his niece of her arrival, with an activity which might well have been envied by many a man of half his years. "Is she worse? Is there any danger in my seeing her?" asked Rosamund, as the doctor led her into the empty room. "Quite the contrary," he replied. "She is much better this morning, and the improvement, I find, is mainly due to the composing and cheering influence on her mind of a message which she received from you last night. It is the discovery of this which makes me anxious to speak to you now on the subject of one particular symptom of her mental condition which surprised and alarmed me when I first discovered it, and which has perplexed me very much ever since. She is suffering, not to detain you and to put the matter at once in the plainest terms, under a mental hallucination of a very extraordinary kind, which, so far as I have observed it, affects her generally toward the close of the day, when the light gets obscure. At such times there is an expression in her eyes, as if she fancied some person had walked suddenly into the room. She looks and talks at perfect vacancy, as you or I might look or talk at some one who was really standing and listening to us. The old man, her uncle, tells me that he first observed this when she came to see him, in Cornwall, I think he said, a short time since. She was speaking to him then on private affairs of her own, when she suddenly stopped, just as the evening was closing in, startled him by a question on the old superstitious subject of the reappearance of the dead, and then, looking away at a shadowed corner of the room, began to talk at it, exactly as I have seen her look and heard her talk upstairs. Whether she fancies that she is pursued by an apparition, or whether she imagines that some living person enters her room at certain times, is more than I can say, and the old man gives me no help in guessing at the truth. Can you throw any light on the matter?" "I hear of it now for the first time," answered Rosamund, looking at the doctor in amazement and alarm. "Perhaps," he rejoined, "she may be more communicative with you than she is with me. If you could manage to be by her bedside at dusk to day or to morrow, and if you think you are not likely to be frightened by it, I should very much wish you to see and hear her when she is under the influence of her delusion. I have tried in vain to draw her attention away from it at the time, or to get her to speak of it afterward. You have evidently considerable influence over her, and you might therefore succeed where I have failed. In her state of health, I attach great importance to clearing her mind of everything that clouds and oppresses it, and especially of such a serious hallucination as that which I have been describing. If you could succeed in combating it, you would be doing her the greatest service, and would be materially helping my efforts to improve her health. Do you mind trying the experiment?" Rosamund promised to devote herself unreservedly to this service, or to any other which was for the patient's good. The doctor thanked her, and led the way back into the hall again. Uncle Joseph was descending the stairs as they came out of the room. "She is ready and longing to see you," he whispered in Rosamund's ear. "I am sure I need not impress on you again the very serious necessity of keeping her composed," said the doctor, taking his leave. "It is, I assure you, no exaggeration to say that her life depends on it." Rosamund bowed to him in silence, and in silence followed the old man up the stairs. At the door of a back room on the second floor Uncle Joseph stopped. "She is there," he whispered eagerly. "I leave you to go in by yourself, for it is best that you should be alone with her at first. I shall walk about the streets in the fine warm sunshine, and think of you both, and come back after a while. Go in, and the blessing and the mercy of God go with you." He lifted her hand to his lips, and softly and quickly descended the stairs again. Rosamund stood alone before the door. A momentary tremor shook her from head to foot, as she stretched out her hand to knock at it. The same sweet voice that she had last heard in her bedroom at West Winston answered her now. As its tones fell on her ear, a thought of her child stole quietly into her heart and stilled its quick throbbing. She opened the door at once and went in. Neither the look of the room inside, nor the view from the windows, neither its characteristic ornaments, nor its prominent pieces of furniture, none of the object in it or about it, which would have caught her quick observation at other times, struck it now. From the moment when she opened the door, she saw nothing but the pillows of the bed, the head resting on them, and the face turned toward hers. As she stepped across the threshold, that face changed; the eyelids drooped a little, and the pale cheeks were tinged suddenly with burning red. Was her mother ashamed to look at her? The bare doubt freed Rosamund in an instant from all the self distrust, all the embarrassment, all the hesitation about choosing her words; and directing her actions which had fettered her generous impulses up to this time. She ran to the bed, raised the worn, shrinking figure in her arms, and laid the poor weary head gently on her warm young bosom. "I have come at last, mother, to take my turn at nursing you," she said. Her heart swelled as those simple words came from it; her eyes overflowed. She could say no more. "Oh, don't cry," murmured the faint, sweet voice timidly. "I have no right to bring you here and make you sorry. Don't cry." "Oh, hush, hush! I shall do nothing but cry if you talk to me like that," said Rosamund. "Let us forget that we have ever been parted. Call me by my name. Speak to me as I shall speak to my own child, if God spares me to see him grow up. Say 'Rosamund,' and, oh, pray, pray, tell me to do something for you." She tore asunder passionately the strings of her bonnet, and threw it from her on the nearest chair. "Look, here is your glass of lemonade on the table. Say, 'Rosamund, bring me my lemonade.' Say it familiarly, mother. Say it as if you knew that I was bound to obey you." She repeated the words after her daughter, but still not in steady tones; repeated them with a sad, wondering smile, and with a lingering of the voice on the name of Rosamund, as if it was a luxury to her to utter it. "You made me so happy with the message and with the kiss you sent me from your child," she said, when Rosamund had given her the lemonade, and was seated quietly by the bedside again. "It was such a kind way of saying that you pardoned me. It gave me all the courage I wanted to speak to you as I am speaking now. Perhaps my illness has changed me, but I don't feel frightened and strange with you, as I thought I should, at our first meeting after you knew the secret. I think I shall soon get well enough to see your child. Is he like what you were at his age? If he is, he must be very, very—" She stopped. "I may think of that," she added, after waiting a little, "but I had better not talk of it, or I shall cry too, and I want to have done with sorrow now." While she spoke those words, while her eyes were fixed with wistful eagerness on her daughter's face, the whole instinct of neatness was still mechanically at work in her weak, wasted fingers. Rosamund had tossed her gloves from her on the bed but the minute before, and already her mother had taken them up, and was smoothing them out carefully, and folding them neatly together, all the while she spoke. "Call me mother again," she said, as Rosamund took the gloves from her and thanked her with a kiss for folding them up. "I have never heard you call me mother till now; never, never till now, from the day when you were born." Rosamund checked the tears that were rising in her eyes again, and repeated the word. It is all the happiness I want, to lie here and look at you, and to hear you say that. Is there any other woman in the world, my love, who has a face so beautiful and so kind as yours?" She paused and smiled faintly. "I can't look at those sweet rosy lips now," she said, "without thinking how many kisses they owe me." "Oh, if you'd only let me pay the debt before," said Rosamund, taking her mother's hand, as she was accustomed to take her child's, and placing it on her neck. "If you had only spoken the first time we met, when you came to nurse me! How sorrowfully I have thought of that since! Oh, mother, did I distress you much in my ignorance? Did it make you cry when you thought of me after that?" "Distress me! All my distress, Rosamund, has been of my own making, not of yours. My kind, thoughtful love, you said, 'Don't be hard on her,' do you remember? When I was being sent away, deservedly sent away, dear, for frightening you, you said to your husband, 'Don't be hard on her.' Only 5 words, but oh, what a comfort it was to me afterward to think that you had said them. I did want to kiss you so, Rosamund, when I was brushing your hair. I had such a hard fight of it to keep from crying out loud when I heard you, behind the bed curtains, wishing your little child good night. My heart was in my mouth, choking me all the time. I took your part afterward, when I went back to my mistress. I wouldn't hear her say a harsh word of you. I could have looked 100 mistresses in the face then, and contradicted them all. Oh, no, no, no! You never distressed me. My worst grief at going away was years and years before I came to nurse you at West Winston. It was when I left my place at Porthgenna, when I stole into your nursery on that dreadful morning, and when I saw you with both your little arms around my master's neck. The doll you had taken to bed with you was in one of your hands, and your head was resting on the captain's bosom, just as mine rests now, oh, so happily, Rosamund, on yours. I heard the last words he was speaking to you, words you were too young to remember. 'Hush, Rosie dear,' he said, 'don't cry any more for poor mamma. Think of poor papa, and try to comfort him.' There, my love, there was the bitterest distress and the hardest to bear. I, your own mother, standing like a spy, and hearing him say that to the child I dared not own. Think of your poor papa. My own Rosamund, you know now what father I thought of when he said those words. How could I tell him the secret? How could I give him the letter, with his wife dead that morning, with nobody but you to comfort him, with the awful truth crushing down upon my heart at every word he spoke, as heavily as ever the rock crushed down upon the father you never saw?" "Don't speak of it now," said Rosamund. "Don't let us refer again to the past. I know all I ought to know, all I wish to know of it. We will talk of the future, mother, and of happier times to come. Let me tell you about my husband. If any words can praise him as he ought to be praised, and thank him as he ought to be thanked, I am sure mine ought. I am sure yours will. Let me tell you what he said, and what he did when I read to him the letter that I found in the myrtle room. Yes, yes, do let me." Warned by a remembrance of the doctor's last injunctions, trembling in secret, as she felt under her hand the heavy, toilsome, irregular heaving of her mother's heart, as she saw the rapid changes of colour, from pale to red, and from red to pale again, that fluttered across her mother's face, she resolved to let no more words pass between them which were of a nature to recall painfully the sorrows and the suffering of the years that were gone. After describing the interview between her husband and herself, which ended in the disclosure of the secret, she led her mother, with compassionate abruptness, to speak of the future, of the time when she would be able to travel again, of the happiness of returning together to Cornwall, of the little festival they might hold on arriving at Uncle Joseph's house in Truro, and of the time after that, when they might go on still farther, to Porthgenna, or perhaps to some other place, where new scenes and new faces might help them to forget all sad associations which it was best to think of no more. Rosamund was still speaking on these topics; her mother was still listening to her with growing interest in every word that she said, when Uncle Joseph returned. He brought in with him a basket of flowers and a basket of fruit, which he held up in triumph at the foot of his niece's bed. "I have been walking about, my child, in the fine bright sunshine," he said, "and waiting to give your face plenty of time to look happy, so that I might see it again, as I want to see it always, for the rest of my life. Aha, Sarah, it is I who have brought the right doctor to cure you," he added gaily, looking at Rosamund. "She has made you better already. Wait but a little while longer, and she will get you up from your bed again, with your two cheeks as red, and your heart as light, and your tongue as fast to chatter as mine. See the fine flowers and the fruit I have brought, that is nice to your eyes, and nice to your nose, and nicest of all to put into your mouth. It is festival time with us to day, and we must make the room bright, bright, bright all over. And then there is your dinner to come soon. I have seen it on the dish, a cherub among chicken fowls. And after that there is your fine sound sleep, with Mozart to sing the cradle song, and with me to sit for watch, and to go downstairs when you wake up again and fetch your cup of tea. Ah, my child, what a fine thing it is to have come at last to this festival day!" With a bright look at Rosamund, and with both his hands full of flowers, he turned away from his niece to begin decorating the room. Except when she thanked the old man for the presents he had brought, her attention had never wandered all the while he had been speaking from her daughter's face; and her first words, when he was silent again, were addressed to Rosamund alone. "While I am happy with my child," she said, "I am keeping you from yours. I, of all persons, ought to be the last to part you from each other too long. Go back now, my love, to your husband and your child, and leave me to my grateful thoughts and my dreams of better times." "If you please, answer yes to that, for your mother's sake," said Uncle Joseph, before Rosamund could reply. "The doctor says she must take her repose in the day as well as her repose in the night. And how shall I get her to close her eyes so long as she has the temptation to keep them open upon you?" Rosamund felt the truth of those last words, and consented to go back for a few hours to the hotel, on the understanding that she was to resume her place at the bedside in the evening. After making this arrangement, she waited long enough in the room to see the meal brought up which Uncle Joseph had announced, and to aid the old man in encouraging her mother to partake of it. When the tray had been removed, and when the pillows of the bed had been comfortably arranged by her own hands, she at last prevailed on herself to take leave. Her mother's arms lingered round her neck; her mother's cheek nestled fondly against hers. "Go, my dear, go now, or I shall get too selfish to part with you even for a few hours," murmured the sweet voice, in the lowest, softest tones. My own Rosamund, I have no words to bless you that are good enough, no words to thank you that will speak as gratefully for me as they ought. Happiness has been long in reaching me, but oh, how mercifully it has come at last!" Before she passed the door, Rosamund stopped and looked back into the room. The table, the mantelpiece, the little framed prints on the wall were bright with flowers; the musical box was just playing the first sweet notes of the air from Mozart; Uncle Joseph was seated already in his accustomed place by the bed, with the basket of fruit on his knees; the pale, worn face on the pillow was tenderly lighted up by a smile. Peace and comfort and repose, all mingled together happily in the picture of the sick room, all joined in leading Rosamund's thoughts to dwell quietly on the hope of a happier time. 3 hours passed; the last glory of the sun was lighting the long summer day to its rest in the western heaven, when Rosamund returned to her mother's bedside. She entered the room softly. The one window in it looked toward the west, and on that side of the bed the chair was placed which Uncle Joseph had occupied when she left him, and in which she now found him still seated on her return. He raised his fingers to his lips and looked toward the bed, as she opened the door. Her mother was asleep, with her hand resting in the hand of the old man. As Rosamund noiselessly advanced, she saw that Uncle Joseph's eyes looked dim and weary. The constraint of the position that he occupied, which made it impossible for him to move without the risk of awakening his niece, seemed to be beginning to fatigue him. Rosamund removed her bonnet and shawl, and made a sign to him to rise and let her take his place. "Yes, yes," she whispered, seeing him reply by a shake of the head. "Let me take your turn, while you go out a little and enjoy the cool evening air. There is no fear of waking her. Her hand is not clasping yours, but only resting in it. Let me steal mine into its place gently, and we shall not disturb her." She slipped her hand under her mother's while she spoke. Uncle Joseph smiled as he rose from his chair and resigned his place to her. "You will have your way," he said. "You are too quick and sharp for an old man like me." "Has she been long asleep?" asked Rosamund. "Nearly 2 hours," answered Uncle Joseph. "But it has not been the good sleep I wanted for her; a dreaming, talking, restless sleep. It is only 10 minutes since she has been so quiet as you see her now." "Surely you let in too much light," whispered Rosamund, looking round at the window, through which the glow of the evening sky poured warmly into the room. "No, no," he hastily rejoined. "Asleep or awake, she always wants the light. If I go away for a little while, as you tell me, and if it gets on to be dusk before I come back, light both those candles on the chimney piece. I shall try to be here again before that; but if the time slips by too fast for me, and if it so happens that she wakes and talks strangely, and looks much away from you into that far corner of the room there, remember that the matches and the candles are together on the chimney piece, and that the sooner you light them after the dim twilight time, the better it will be." With those words he stole on tiptoe to the door and went out. His parting directions recalled Rosamund to a remembrance of what had passed between the doctor and herself that morning. She looked round again anxiously to the window. The sun was just sinking beyond the distant housetops; the close of day was not far off. As she turned her head once more toward the bed, a momentary chill crept over her. She trembled a little, partly at the sensation itself, partly at the recollection it aroused of that other chill which had struck her in the solitude of the myrtle room. Stirred by the mysterious sympathies of touch, Her mother's hand at the same instant moved in hers, and over the sad peacefulness of the weary face there fluttered a momentary trouble, the flying shadow of a dream. The pale parted lips opened, closed, quivered, opened again. The toiling breath came and went quickly, and more quickly; the head moved uneasily on the pillow, the eyelids half unclosed themselves. Low, faint moaning sounds poured rapidly from the lips, changed ere long to half articulated sentences, then merged softly into intelligible speech, and uttered these words: "Swear that you will not destroy this paper. Swear that you will not take this paper away with you if you leave the house." The words that followed these were whispered so rapidly and so low that Rosamund's ear failed to catch them. They were followed by a short silence. Then the dreaming voice spoke again suddenly, and spoke louder. "Where? Where?" it said. "In the bookcase? In the table drawer? Stop! Stop! In the picture of the ghost?" The last words struck cold on Rosamund's heart. She drew back suddenly with a movement of alarm, checked herself the instant after, and bent down over the pillow again. But it was too late. Her hand had moved abruptly when she drew back, and her mother awoke with a start and a faint cry, with vacant, terror stricken eyes, and with the perspiration standing thick on her forehead. "Mother!" cried Rosamund, raising her on the pillow. "I have come back. Don't you know me?" "Mother?" she repeated in mournful, questioning tones. "Mother?" At the second repetition of the word a bright flush of delight and surprise broke out on her face, and she clasped both arms suddenly round her daughter's neck. "Oh, my own Rosamund," she said, "if I had ever been used to waking up and seeing your dear face look at me, I should have known you sooner, in spite of my dream. Did you wake me, my love, or did I wake myself? I am afraid I awoke you, mother." "Don't say afraid. I would wake from the sweetest sleep that ever woman had to see your face and to hear you say 'Mother' to me. You have delivered me, my love, from the terror of one of my dreadful dreams. Oh, Rosamund, I think I should live to be happy in your love if I could only get Porthgenna Tower out of my mind, if I could only never remember again the bedchamber where my mistress died, and the room where I hid the letter." "We will try and forget Porthgenna Tower now," said Rosamund. "Shall we talk about other places where I have lived, which you have never seen? Or shall I read to you, mother? Have you got any book here that you are fond of?" She looked across the bed at the table on the other side. There was nothing on it but some bottles of medicine, a few of Uncle Joseph's flowers in a glass of water, and a little oblong working box. She looked round at the chest of drawers behind her. There were no books placed on the top of it. Before she turned toward the bed again, her eyes wandered aside to the window. The sun was lost beyond the distant hill tops; the close of day was near at hand. "If I could forget oh, me, if I could only forget!" said her mother, sighing wearily, and beating her hand on the coverlet of the bed. "Are you well enough, dear, to amuse yourself with work?" asked Rosamund, pointing to the little oblong box on the table, and trying to lead the conversation to a harmless, everyday topic by asking questions about it. "What work do you do? May I look at it?" Her face lost its weary, suffering look, and brightened once more into a smile. "There is no work there," she said. "All the treasures I had in the world, till you came to see me, are shut up in that one little box. Open it, my love, and look inside." Rosamund obeyed, placing the box on the bed where her mother could see it easily. The first object that she discovered inside was a little book in dark, worn binding. It was an old copy of Wesley's hymns. Some withered blades of grass lay between its pages, and on one of its blank leaves was this inscription: "Sarah Leeson, her book, the gift of Hugh Polwell." "Look at it, my dear," said her mother. "I want you to know it again. When my time comes to leave you, Rosamund, lay it on my bosom with your own dear hands, and put a little morsel of your hair with it, and bury me in the grave at Porthgenna churchyard, where he has been waiting for me to come to him so many weary years. The other things in the box, Rosamund, belong to you. They are little stolen keepsakes that used to remind me of my child when I was alone in the world. Perhaps years and years hence, when your brown hair begins to grow grey like mine, you may like to show these poor trifles to your children when you talk about me. Don't mind telling them, Rosamund, how your mother sinned and how she suffered. You can always let these little trifles speak for her at the end. The least of them will show that she always loved you." She took out of the box a morsel of neatly folded white paper, which had been placed under the book of Wesley's hymns, opened it, and showed her daughter a few faded laburnum leaves that lay inside. "I took these from your bed, Rosamund, when I came, as a stranger, to nurse you at West Winston. I tried to take a ribbon out of your trunk, love, after I had taken the flowers, a ribbon that I knew had been round your neck, but the doctor came near at the time and frightened me." She folded the paper up again, laid it aside on the table, and drew from the box next a small print which had been taken from the illustrations to a pocket book. It represented a little girl, in gipsy hat, sitting by the waterside, and weaving a daisy chain. As a design it was worthless; as a print it had not even the mechanical merit of being a good impression. Underneath it a line was written in faintly pencilled letters: "Rosamund, when I last saw her." "It was never pretty enough for you," she said, "but still there was something in it that helped me to remember what my own love was like when she was a little girl." She put the engraving aside with the laburnum leaves, and took from the box a leaf of a copy book folded in two, out of which there dropped a tiny strip of paper covered with small printed letters. She looked at the strip of paper first. "The advertisement of your marriage, Rosamund," she said. "I used to be fond of reading it over and over again to myself when I was alone, and trying to fancy how you looked and what dress you wore. If I had only known when you were going to be married, I would have ventured into the church, my love, to look at you and at your husband. But that was not to be, and perhaps it was best so, for the seeing you in that stolen way might only have made my trials harder to bear afterward. I have had no other keepsake to remind me of you, Rosamund, except this leaf out of your first copy book. The nursemaid at Porthgenna tore up the rest one day to light the fire, and I took this leaf when she was not looking. See, you had not got as far as words then; you could only do upstrokes and downstrokes. Oh me, how many times I have sat looking at this one leaf of paper, and trying to fancy that I saw your small child's hand travelling over it, with the pen held tight in the rosy little fingers. I think I have cried oftener, my darling, over that first copy of yours than over all my other keepsakes put together." Rosamund turned aside her face toward the window to hide the tears which she could restrain no longer. As she wiped them away, the first sight of the darkening sky warned her that the twilight dimness was coming soon. How dull and faint the glow in the west looked now, How near it was to the close of day! When she turned toward the bed again, her mother was still looking at the leaf of the copy book. "That nursemaid who tore up all the rest of it to light the fire," she said, "was a kind friend to me in those early days at Porthgenna. She used sometimes to let me put you to bed, Rosamund, and never asked questions or teased me as the rest of them did. She risked the loss of her place by being so good to me. My mistress was afraid of my betraying myself and betraying her if I was much in the nursery, and she gave orders that I was not to go there, because it was not my place. None of the other women servants were so often stopped from playing with you and kissing you, Rosamund, as I was. But the nursemaid, God bless and prosper her for it, stood my friend. I often lifted you into your little cot, my love, and wished you good night when my mistress thought I was at work in her room. You used to say you liked your nurse better than you liked me, but you never told me so fretfully, and you always put your laughing lips up to mine whenever I asked you for a kiss." Rosamund laid her head gently on the pillow by the side of her mother's. "Try to think less of the past, dear, and more of the future," she whispered pleadingly. "Try to think of the time when my child will help you to recall those old days without their sorrow, the time when you will teach him to put his lips up to yours as I used to put mine." "I will try, Rosamund, but my only thoughts of the future, for years and years past, have been thoughts of meeting you in heaven. If my sins are forgiven, how shall we meet there? Shall you be like my little child to me, the child I never saw again after she was 5 years old? I wonder if the mercy of God will recompense me for our long separation on earth. I wonder if you will first appear to me in the happy world with your child's face, and by what you should have been to me on earth, my little angel that I can carry in my arms. If we pray in heaven, shall I teach you your prayers there as some comfort to me for never having taught them to you here?" She paused, smiled sadly, and closed her eyes, gave herself in silence to the dream thoughts that were still floating in her mind. Thinking that she might sink to rest again if she was left undisturbed, Rosamund neither moved nor spoke. After watching the peaceful face for some time, she became conscious that the light was fading on it slowly. As that conviction impressed itself on her, she looked round at the window once more. The western clouds wore their quiet twilight colours already; the close of day had come. The moment she moved the chair, she felt her mother's hand on her shoulder. When she looked again toward the bed, she saw her mother's eyes open and looking at her, as she thought, with a change in their expression, a change to vacancy. "Why do I talk of heaven?" she said, turning her face suddenly toward the darkening sky, and speaking in low, muttering tones. "How do I know I am fit to go there? And yet, Rosamund, I am not guilty of breaking my oath to my mistress. You can say for me that I never destroyed the letter, and that I never took it away with me when I left the house. I tried to get it out of the myrtle room, but I only wanted to hide it somewhere else. I never thought to take it away from the house. I never meant to break my oath." "It will be dark soon, mother. Let me get up for one moment to light the candles." Her hand crept softly upward and clung fast round Rosamund's neck. "I never swore to give him the letter," she said. "There was no crime in the hiding of it. You found it in a picture, Rosamund? They used to call it a picture of the Porthgenna ghost. Nobody knew how old it was, or when it came into the house. My mistress hated it, because the painted face had a strange likeness to hers. She told me, when first I lived at Porthgenna, to take it down from the wall and destroy it. I was afraid to do that, so I hid it away, before ever you were born, in the myrtle room. You found the letter at the back of the picture, Rosamund? And yet that was a likely place to hide it in. Nobody had ever found the picture, why should anybody find the letter that was hid in it? Let me get a light, Mother. I am sure you would like to have a light." "No, no light now. Give the darkness time to gather down there in the corner of the room. Lift me up close to you, and let me whisper." The clinging arm tightened its grasp as Rosamund raised her in the bed. The fading light from the windows fell full on her face and was reflected dimly in her vacant eyes. "I am waiting for something that comes at dusk before the candles are lit," she whispered, in low, breathless tones. "My mistress down there." And she pointed away to the farthest corner of the room near the door. "Mother, for God's sake, what is it? What has changed you so?" "That's right. Say 'Mother.' If she does come, she can't stop when she hears you call me Mother, when she sees us together at last, loving and knowing each other in spite of her. Oh, my kind, tender, pitying child! If you can only deliver me from her, how long may I live yet? How happy we may both be!" "Don't talk so, don't talk so. Tell me quietly, dear, dear mother, tell me quietly." "Hush, hush! I'm going to tell you. She threatened me on her deathbed if I thwarted her. She said she would come to me from the other world, Rosamund. I have thwarted her, and she has kept her promise. All my life since she has kept her promise. Look, down there." Her left arm was still clasped round Rosamund's neck. She stretched her right arm out toward the far corner of the room, and shook her hand slowly at the empty air. "Look," she said, "there she is, as she always comes to me at the close of day, with the coarse black dress on that my guilty hands made for her, with the smile that there was on her face when she asks me if she looked like a servant. Mistress, mistress! Ah, rest at last. The secret is ours no longer. Rest at last. My child is my own again. Rest at last, and come between us no more." She ceased panting for breath, and laid her hot throbbing cheek against the cheek of her daughter. "Call me Mother again," she whispered. "Say it loud, and send her away from me for ever." Rosamund mastered the terror that shook her in every limb, and pronounced the word. Her mother leaned forward a little, still gasping heavily for breath, and looked with straining eyes into the quiet twilight dimness at the lower end of the room. "Gone!" she cried suddenly, with a scream of exultation. "Oh, merciful, merciful God! Gone at last!" The next instant she sprang up on her knees in the bed. For one awful moment her eyes shone in the grey twilight with a radiant, unearthly beauty, as they fastened their last look of fondness on her daughter's face. "Oh, my love, my angel!" she murmured. "How happy we shall be together now!" As she said the words, she twined her arms round Rosamund's neck, and pressed her lips rapturously on the lips of her child. The kiss lingered till her head sank forward gently on Rosamund's bosom, lingered till the time of God's mercy came, and the weary heart rested at last. End of Book 6, Chapter 4.
The Dead Secret by Wilkie Collins. Book 6, Chapter 5. £40,000. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Robert Pendleton. The Dead Secret by Wilkie Collins, Book 6, Chapter 5, £40,000. No popular saying is more commonly accepted than the maxim which asserts that time is the great consoler, and, probably, no popular saying more imperfectly expresses the truth. The work that we must do, the responsibilities that we must undertake, the example that we must set to others, these are the great consolers, for these apply the first remedies to the malady of grief. Time possesses nothing but the negative virtue of helping it to wear itself out. Who that has observed at all has not perceived that those among us who soonest recover from the shock of a great grief for the dead are those who have the most duties to perform toward the living? When the shadow of calamity rests on our houses, the question with us is not how much time will suffice to bring back the sunshine to us again, but how much occupation have we got to force us forward into the place where the sunshine is waiting for us to come. Time may claim many victories, but not the victory over grief. The great consolation for the loss of the dead who are gone is to be found in the great necessity of thinking of the living who remain. The history of Rosamond's daily life, now that the darkness of a heavy affliction had fallen on it, was in itself the sufficient illustration of this truth. It was not the slow lapse of time that helped to raise her up again, but the necessity which would not wait for time, the necessity which made her remember what was due to the husband who sorrowed with her, to the child whose young life was linked to hers, and to the old man whose helpless grief found no support but in the comfort she could give, learned no lesson of resignation but from the example she could set. From the first, the responsibility of sustaining him had rested on her shoulders alone. Before the close of day had been counted out by the first hour of the night, she had been torn from the bedside by the necessity of meeting him at the door, and preparing him to know that he was entering the chamber of death, to guide the dreadful truth gradually and gently till it stood face to face with him, to support him under the shock of recognizing it, to help his mind to recover after the inevitable blow had struck it at last. These were the sacred duties which claimed all the devotion that Rosamond had to give, and which forbade her heart, for his sake, to dwell selfishly on its own grief. He looked like a man whose faculties had been stunned past recovery. He would sit for hours with the musical box by his side, patting it absently from time to time, and whispering to himself as he looked at it, but never attempting to set it playing. It was the one memorial left that reminded him of all the joys and sorrows, the simple family interests and affections of his past life. When Rosamond first sat by his side and took his hand to comfort him, he looked backward and forward with forlorn eyes from her compassionate face to the musical box, and vacantly repeated to himself the same words over and over again. "They are all gone. My brother Max, my wife, my little Joseph, my sister Agatha, and Sarah, my niece. I and my little bit of box are left alone together in the world. Mozart can sing no more. He has sung to the last of them now." The second day there was no change in him. On the third, Rosamond placed the book of hymns reverently on her mother's bosom, laid a lock of her own hair round it, and kissed the sad, peaceful face for the last time. The old man was with her at that silent leave-taking, and followed her away when it was over. By the side of the coffin, and afterward, when she took him back with her to her husband, he was still sunk in the same apathy of grief which had overwhelmed him from the first. But when they began to speak of the removal of the remains the next day, to talk again in church, they noticed that his dim eyes brightened something, and that his wandering attention followed every word they said. After a while he rose from his chair, approached Rosamond, and looked anxiously in her face. "I think I could bear it better if you would let me go with her," he said. "We two should have gone back to Cornwall together if she had lived. Will you let us still go back together now that she has died?" Rosamond gently remonstrated and tried to make him see that it was best to leave the remains to be removed under the charge of her husband's servant, whose fidelity could be depended on, and whose position made him the fittest person to be charged with cares and responsibilities which near relations were not capable of undertaking with sufficient composure. She told him that her husband intended to stop in London, to give her one day of rest and quiet, which she absolutely needed, and that they then proposed to return to Cornwall in time to be at Porthgenna before the funeral took place, and she begged earnestly that he would not think of separating his lot from theirs at a time of trouble and trial, when they ought to be all three most closely united by the ties of mutual sympathy and mutual sorrow. He listened silently and submissively while Rosamond was speaking, but he only repeated his simple petition when she had done. The one idea in his mind now was the idea of going back to Cornwall with all that was left on earth of his sister's child. Leonard and Rosamond both saw that it would be useless to oppose it. Both felt that it would be cruelty to keep him with them, and kindness to let him go away. After privately charging the servant to spare him all trouble and difficulty, to humour him by acceding to any wishes that he might express, and to give them all possible protection and help without obtruding either officiously on his attention, they left him free to follow the one purpose of his heart, which still connected him with the interests and events of the passing day. "I shall thank you better soon," he said at leave-taking, "for letting me go away out of this din of London, with all that is left to me of Sarah, my niece. I will dry up my tears as well as I can and try to have more courage when we meet again." On the next day, when they were alone, Rosamond and her husband sought refuge from the oppression of the present in speaking together of the future, and of the influence which the change in their fortunes ought to be allowed to exercise on their plans and projects for the time to come. After exhausting this topic, the conversation turned next on the subject of their friends, and on the necessity of communicating to some of the oldest of their associates the events which had followed the discovery in the myrtle room. The first name on their lips while they were considering this question was the name of Dr. Chenery, and Rosamond, dreading the effect on her spirits of allowing her mind to remain unoccupied, volunteered to write to the vicar at once, referring briefly to what had happened since they had last communicated with him, and asking him to fulfil that year an engagement of long standing, which he had made with her husband and herself, to spend his autumn holiday with them at Porthgenna Tower. Rosamond's heart yearned for a sight of her old friend, and she knew him well enough to be assured that a hint at the affliction which had befallen her, and at the hard trial which she had undergone, would be more than enough to bring them together the moment Dr. Chenery could make his arrangements for leaving home. The writing of this letter suggested recollections which called to mind another friend whose intimacy with Leonard and Rosamond was of recent date, but whose connection with the earlier among the train of circumstances which had led to the discovery of the secret entitled him to a certain share in their confidence. This friend was Mr. Orridge, the doctor at West Winston, who had accidentally been the means of bringing Rosamond's mother to her bedside. To him she now wrote, acknowledging the promise which she had made on leaving West Winston to communicate the result of their search for the myrtle room, and informing him that it had terminated in the discovery of some very sad events of a family nature, which were now numbered with the events of the past. More than this it was not necessary to say to a friend who occupied such a position toward them as that held by Mr. Orridge. Rosamond had written the address of this second letter, and was absently drawing lines on the blotting paper with her pen, when she was startled by hearing a contention of angry voices in the passage outside. Almost before she had time to wonder what the noise meant, the door was violently pushed open, and a tall, shabbily dressed, elderly man, with a peevish, haggard face and a ragged grey beard, stalked in, followed indignantly by the head waiter of the hotel. "I have 3 times told this person," began the waiter, with a strong emphasis on the word person, "that Mr. and Mrs. Frankland were not at home," broke in the shabbily dressed man, finishing the sentence for the waiter. "Yes, you told me that, and I told you that the gift of speech was only used by mankind for the purpose of telling lies, and that consequently I didn't believe you. You have told a lie. Here are Mr. and Mrs. Frankland, both at home. I come on business, and I mean to have 5 minutes' talk with them. I sit down unasked, and I announced my own name, Andrew Treverton." With those words he took his seat coolly on the nearest chair. Leonard's cheeks reddened with anger while he was speaking, but Rosamond interposed before her husband could say a word. "It is useless, my love, to be angry with him," she whispered. "The quiet way is the best way with a man like that." She made a sign to the waiter which gave him permission to leave the room, then turned to Mr. Treverton. "You have forced your presence on us, sir," she said quietly, "at a time when a very sad affliction makes us quite unfit for contentions of any kind. We are willing to show more consideration for your age than you have shown for our grief. If you have anything to say to my husband, he is ready to control himself and to hear you quietly, for my sake." "And I shall be short with him and with you, for my own sake," rejoined Mr. Treverton. "No woman has ever yet had the chance of sharpening her tongue long on me, or ever shall. I have come here to say 3 things. First, your lawyers told me all about the discovery in the Myrtle Room, and how you made it. Secondly, I have got your money. Thirdly, I mean to keep it. What do you think of that?" "I think you need not give yourself the trouble of remaining in the room any longer, if your only object in coming here is to tell us what we know already," replied Leonard. "We know you have got the money, and we never doubted that you meant to keep it." "You are quite sure of that, I suppose?" said Mr. Treverton. "Quite sure you have no lingering hope that any future twists and turns of the law will take the money out of my pocket again and put it back into yours? It is only fair to tell you that there is not the shadow of a chance of any such thing ever happening, or of my ever turning generous and rewarding you of my own accord for the sacrifice you have made. I have been to Doctors' Commons, I have taken out a grant of administration, I have got the money legally, I have lodged it safe at me bankers, and I have never had one kind feeling in me heart since I was born. That was me brother's character of me, and he knew more of me disposition, of course, than anyone else. Once again, I tell you both, not a farthing of all that large fortune will ever return to either of you." "And once again I tell you," said Leonard, "that we have no desire to hear what we know already. It is a relief to my conscience and to my wife's to have resigned a fortune which we had no right to possess, and I speak for her as well as for myself when I tell you that your attempt to attach an interested motive to our renunciation of that money is an insult to us both, which you ought to have been ashamed to offer." "That is your opinion, is it?" said Mr. Treverton. "You, who have lost the money, speak to me, who have got it, in that manner, do you? Pray, do you approve of your husband's treating a rich man who might make both your fortunes in that way?" he inquired, addressing himself sharply to Rosamond. "Most assuredly I approve of it," she answered. "I never agreed with him more heartily in my life than I agree with him now." "Oh," said Mr. Treverton, "then it seems you care no more for the loss of the money than he does." "He has told you already," said Rosamond, "that it is as great a relief to my conscience as to his to have given it up." Mr. Treverton carefully placed a thick stick which he carried with him upright between his knees, crossed his hands on the top of it, rested his chin on them, and in that investigating position stared steadily in Rosamond's face. "I rather wish I'd brought Shrowell here with me," he said to himself. "I should like him to have seen this. It staggers me. I rather think it would have staggered him. Both these people," continued Mr. Treverton, looking perplexedly from Rosamond to Leonard, and from Leonard back again to Rosamond, "are to all outward appearance human beings. They walk on their hind legs. They express ideas readily by uttering articulate sounds. They have the usual allowance of features, and in respect of weight, height, and size, They appear to me to be mere average human creatures of the regular civilized sort, and yet there they sit, taking the loss of a fortune of £40,000 as easily as Croesus, king of Lydia, might have taken the loss of a halfpenny. He rose, put on his hat, tucked the thick stick under his arm, and advanced a few steps toward Rosamond. "I'm going now," he said. "Would you like to shake hands?" Rosamond turned her back on him contemptuously. "Ha! Ha!" Mr. Trefethen chuckled with an air of supreme satisfaction. Meanwhile Leonard, who sat near the fireplace, and whose colour was rising angrily once more, had been feeling for the bell-rope, and had just succeeded in getting it into his hand as Mr. Trefethen approached the door. "Don't ring, Lenny," said Rosamond. "He is going of his own accord." Mr. Trefethen stepped out into the passage, then glanced back into the room with an expression of puzzled curiosity on his face, as if he was looking into a cage which contained two animals of a species that he had never heard of before. "I have seen some strange sights in me time," he said to himself. "I have had some queer experience of this trumpery little planet, and of the creatures who inhabit it, but I never was staggered yet by any human phenomenon as I am staggered now by those two." He shut the door without saying another word, and Rosamond heard him chuckle to himself again as he walked away along the passage. 10 minutes afterward, the waiter brought up a sealed letter addressed to Mrs. Franklin. It had been written, he said, in the coffee room at the hotel by the person who had intruded himself into Mr. and Mrs. Franklin's presence. After giving it to the waiter to deliver, he had gone away in a hurry, swinging his thick stick complacently, laughing to himself. Rosamond opened the letter. On one side of it was a cross cheque drawn in her name, £40,000. On the other side was these lines: "Take your money back again. First, because you and your husband are the only two people I have ever met with who are not likely to be made rascals by being made rich. Secondly, because you have told the truth when letting it out meant losing money, and keeping it in saving a fortune. Thirdly, because you are not the child of the player woman. Fourthly, because you can't help yourself, for I shall leave it to you at me death if you won't have it now. Goodbye. Don't come and see me. Don't write grateful letters to me. Don't invite me into the country. Don't praise me generosity. And above all things, don't have anything more to do with Shrowell. Andrew Trefethen." The first thing Rosamond did when she and her husband had a little recovered from their astonishment was to disobey the injunction which forbade her to address any grateful letters to Mr. Trefethen. The messenger who was sent with her note to Bayswater returned without an answer, and reported that he had received directions from an invisible man with a gruff voice to throw it over the garden wall and to go away immediately after, unless he wanted to have his head broken. Mr. Nixon, to whom Leonard immediately sent word of what had happened, volunteered to go to Bayswater the same evening and make an attempt to see Mr. Trefethen on Mr. and Mrs. Franklin's behalf. He found Timon of London more approachable than he had anticipated. The misanthrope was, for once in his life, in a good humour. This extraordinary change in him had been produced by the sense of satisfaction which he experienced in having just turned Shrowell out of his situation, on the ground that his master was not fit company for him after having committed such an act of folly as giving Mrs. Franklin back her £40,000. "Ha! Ha! I told him," said Mr. Trefethen, chuckling over his recollection of the parting scene between his servant and himself, "I told him that I could not possibly expect to merit his continued approval after what I had done, and that I could not think of detaining him in his place under the circumstances. I begged him to view me conduct as leniently as he could, because the first cause that led to it was, after all, his copying the plan of Porthgenna, which guided Mrs. Franklin to the discovery in the myrtle room. I congratulated him on having got a reward of £5 for being the means of restoring a fortune of 40,000, and I bowed him out with a polite humility that half drove him mad. Shrowell and I have had a good many tussles in our time. He was always even with me till today, and Now I've thrown him on his back at last." Although Mr. Treverton was willing to talk of the defeat and dismissal of Shrowl as long as the lawyer would listen to him, he was perfectly unmanageable on the subject of Mrs. Frankland when Mr. Nixon tried to turn the conversation to that topic. He would hear no messages, he would give no promise of any sort for the future. All that he could be prevailed on to say about himself and his own projects was that he intended to give up the house at Bayswater and to travel again for the purpose of studying human nature in different countries on a plan that he had not tried yet, the plan of endeavouring to find out the good that there might be in people as well as the bad. He said the idea had been suggested to his mind by his anxiety to ascertain whether Mr. and Mrs. Frankland were perfectly exceptional human beings or not. At present he was disposed to think that they were, and that his travels were not likely to lead to anything at all remarkable in the shape of a satisfactory result. Mr. Nixon pleaded hard for something in the shape of a friendly message to take back, along with the news of his intended departure. The request produced nothing but a sardonic chuckle, followed by this parting speech, delivered to the lawyer at the garden gate. "Tell those two superhuman people," said Timon of London, "that I may give up me travels in disgust when they least expected, and that I may possibly come back to look at them again. I don't personally care about either of them, but I should like to get one satisfactory sensation more out of the lamentable spectacle of humanity before I die." End of The Dead Secret by Wilkie Collins. Book 6, Chapter 5, £40,000. Recording by Robert Pendleton, Benicia, California. Email address robrep1950@gmail.com. The Dead Secret by Wilkie Collins. Chapter 6. The Dawn of a New Life. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Robert Pendleton. The Dead Secret by Wilkie Collins. Chapter 6. The Dawn of a New Life. 4 days afterward, Rosamond and Leonard and Uncle Joseph met together in the cemetery of the church of Porthgenna. The earth to which we all return had closed over her. The weary pilgrimage of Sarah Leeson had come to its quiet end at last. Hours had passed since the last words of the burial service had been read. The fresh turf was heaped already over the mound, and the old headstone with the miner's epitaph on it had been raised once more in its former place at the head of the grave. Rosamond was reading the inscription softly to her husband. Uncle Joseph had walked a little apart from them while she was thus engaged, and had knelt down by himself at the foot of the mound. He was fondly smoothing and patting the newly laid turf, as he had often smoothed Sarah's hair in the long past days of her youth, as he had often patted her hand in the after-time when her heart was weary and her hair was grey. "Shall we add any new words to the old worn letters as they stand now?" said Rosamond, when she had read the inscription to the end. "There is a blank space left on the stone. Shall we fill it, love, with the initials of my mother's name and the date of her death? I feel something in my heart which seems to tell me to do that, and to do no more." "So let it be, Rosamond," said her husband. "That short and simple inscription is the fittest and the best." She looked away as he gave that answer, to the foot of the grave, and left him for a moment to approach the old man. "Take my hand, Uncle Joseph," she said, and touched him gently on the shoulder. "Take my hand and let us go back together to the house." He rose as she spoke and looked at her doubtfully. The musical box, enclosed in its well-worn leather case, lay on the grave near the place where he had been kneeling. Rosamond took it up from the grass and slung it in the old place at his side, which it had always occupied when he was away from home. He sighed a little as he thanked her. "Mozart can sing no more," he said. "He has sung to the last of them now." "Don't say to the last yet," said Rosamond. "Don't say to the last, Uncle Joseph, while I am alive. Surely Mozart will sing to me, for my mother's sake." A smile, the first she had seen since the time of their grief, trembled faintly around his lips. "There is comfort in that," he said. "There is comfort for Uncle Joseph still in hearing that." "Take my hand," she repeated softly. "Come home with us now." He looked down wistfully at the grave. "I will follow you," he said, "if you will go on before me to the gate." Rosamond took her husband's arm and guided him to the path that led out of the churchyard. As they passed from sight, Uncle Joseph knelt down once more at the foot of the grave and pressed his lips on the fresh turf. "Goodbye, my child," he whispered, and laid his cheek for a moment against the grass before he rose again. At the gate Rosamond was waiting for him. Her right hand was resting on her husband's arm. Her left hand was held out for Uncle Joseph to take. "How cool the breeze is," said Leonard. "How pleasantly the sea sounds. Surely this is a fine summer day." "The calmest and loveliest of the year," said Rosamond. "The only clouds on the sky are clouds of shining white. The only shadows over the moor lie light as down on the heather. Oh, Lenny, it is such a different day from that day of dull oppression and misty heat when we found the letter in the myrtle room. Even the dark tower of our old house yonder looks its brightest and best, as if it waited to welcome us to the beginning of a new life. I will make it a happy life to you and to Uncle Joseph if I can, happy as the sunshine we are walking in now. You shall never repent, love, if I can help it, that you have married a wife who has no claim of her own to the honours of a family name." "I can never repent my marriage, Rosamond, because I can never forget the lesson that my wife has taught me." "What lesson, Lenny?" "An old one, my dear, which some of us can never learn too often. The highest honours, Rosamond, are those which no accident can take away, the honours that are conferred by love and truth." End of The Dead Secret by Wilkie Collins. Book 6, Chapter 6, The Dawn of a New Life. Recording by Robert Pendleton, Benicia, California. Email address robarep1950@gmail.com. End of The Dead Secret by Wilkie Collins.